Friends, welcome to the Word on Sunday, a platform to reflect and pray with the scripture readings of every Sunday. There was a salt doll and it wanted to go walk miles and miles and go to sea. And it told the sea, "Hey, I want to get to know you more." And the sea right away said, "Hey, come on in, welcome in. But if you want to know me, you need to step inside." So the salt doll made its way into some depth of the ocean, found itself kind of melting away. Then the salt doll told the sea, "Hey, wait a minute, what are you doing to me? I find myself melting away." Then the sea answered the salt doll, "If you want to know me, you must be prepared to give something of yourself to me." Then finally, the salt doll completely got melted into the ocean and said, "Now I know the sea." On this fifth Sunday of Lent, we hear in the gospel about the grain of wheat falling down into the ground, dying, and then giving life. So as we continue our Lenten journey, covenant is renewed, cross is embraced, and Christ is crucified. In previous Sundays, Jesus was presented as the new temple, the wisdom of God, and the power of God. This Sunday, we see him as the grain of wheat falling into the ground, dying to give us all life. The definition of such giving of oneself, Jesus shows us in totality as he died for us on the cross. In the first reading, Jeremiah explains how God will replace the old covenant with the new covenant by Jesus on the cross for the forgiveness of sins. That is the grain of wheat falling into the ground and dying. This covenant is prophesied by Jeremiah and is fulfilled in Jesus through his death and resurrection. In the second reading, letter to the Hebrews summarizes this in 3 sentences, in 3 verses. After the past couple of Sundays, this Sunday, letter to the Hebrews, we get to hear Christology in 3 verses. First, refers to the very death and suffering of Jesus. 2, the lesson that Jesus learned through suffering. 3, how Jesus is now the great mediator for us and what he gained by that suffering. In the gospel, we see the grain of wheat. Jesus is telling the Greeks who were interested to get to know Jesus. Notice how this grain of wheat is buried in the earth, means avoiding sin and accepting suffering and living for others. The desire to see Jesus, the desire to know Jesus. The Greeks came to Philip and said, "Sir, we would like to see Jesus." So from Greeks to Philip, Philip to Andrew, Andrew and Philip to Jesus. And Jesus says, "Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground." Imagine if somebody were to come to your home or office and want to get to know you, you would welcome them, you would sit with them and engage in a very decent conversation. But the desire of the Greeks to know Jesus, to see Jesus, was answered in quite a different way. When Andrew and Philip took the Greeks to Jesus, he said right away, "Unless the grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it does not bear fruit." What would be my answer, my response, if Jesus were to tell me the same today? Jesus talks about the grain of wheat dying and becoming productive, bearing much fruit. Then goes on to say his mission. that through his death he will draw all people to himself. Lifted up high on the cross, we evangelize when we, like Jesus, like the grain of wheat, fall into the ground, die to ourselves, and then we rise up. And in doing so, when we look up the cross and suffer and die to ourselves, we evangelize. So as we get closer to the Holy Week, Jesus gives us this invitation. If you and I were to go to Jesus or his disciples and say, hey guys, can you give me an opportunity to see Jesus? Yes, they will take us. But Jesus would right away tell you and me, are you prepared to die like the grain of wheat, fall into the ground, die and rise again? And we do this when Christ is lifted up high on the cross. May we prepare ourselves to give up ourselves, to give off ourselves like the salt doll, like the grain of wheat. May our journeys be blessed as we approach the Holy Week. Father Praveen Lakkisetti, here at St. Pius X Catholic Church in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you and God bless.